Of the 40-some different methods, they match pretty closely on the age of the Earth, and carbon-14 dating is not used in general for dating very old things. So, thank you.
Okay, if I could get my slides on. One of the problems, I think you've been taught all through your education, as was I and as have many people, that the geologic column is something we can rely on. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these different rock layers. And you've been taught, and I was taught, that these layers are different ages, and that's simply not true. The things are really dated by the geologic position, and I can show you many examples of what are called polystrate fossils, petrified trees connecting these layers.
Dr. Hovind.
Are we supposed to rebut?
The intent was that you both get 2.5 minutes to answer the question,
it's over with?
and then we move to a new question. However, you have anticipated the next question.
Okay.
Which was to discuss the geologic column and how it fits into discussions of the age of the Earth. Okay. However, it's Jayman's turn to go first.
Jayman's turn. Go ahead. Shut mine off.
Okay. So do you have a specific question? Or
I don't have so much a specific question.
Okay.
We have several questions up here. They all relate to the geologic column and how this fits into either a young Earth or an old Earth, that kind of thing. So if you can just kind of take that as a subject.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the extent of my understanding, which is not a lot. So, the way that I've been taught, and yes, I do trust some of my education, is that the geologic column is not one of these voodoo science areas. There are such areas. I'm afraid that the geologic column is pretty well accepted worldwide. And it's not just accepted by geologists, but it's pretty much accepted by all the major disciplines of science. Now, one thing that comes up pretty frequently is what you see in textbooks. And we saw many examples in newspapers and textbooks of bad information that's come out. And here's a news flash. Bad information is often put out. And you know what? That's not necessarily evidence from science. That's oftentimes it's misinterpretation of the facts by journalists, or it's oftentimes the agenda of humanistic textbook writers. And it's really not any reflection on the disciplines themselves. So if there's bad information in textbooks, and I haven't seen too many recent textbooks up there. I saw a lot of 1960s era, 1970s era examples, but if there's bad information in there, there's a good reason for that. A lot of times they have a pretty overt agenda and towards evolution, and I don't believe the geologic column, although reliable, supports evolution.
Okay, I get to answer that one, right? The geologic column was invented in 1830 by a guy named Charles Lyell. They gave each of the layers a different name and age and an index fossil, like maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park. The geologic column does not exist any place on planet Earth except the textbooks. The only place you'll find it is the textbooks. This is a textbook author admits if there were a column of sediments, and unfortunately no such column exists. And by the way, I have textbooks clear up to 2004 I can reference if you'd like. They all teach this, even today. It's not from the 1960s, okay? If the geologic column existed in one place, it'd be 100 miles thick. My question would be, if the layers are really different ages, why are there no erosion marks between the layers? Don't you think it's going to rain once in a while in 10 million years, waiting for the next layer to be set on top? It just simply doesn't happen. The fact of the matter is the geologic column is a joke. It doesn't exist anyplace. It's based on circular reasoning, and the fossils are dated based upon which layer they're found in, not by potassium-argon dating or uranium-lead dating or any other dating method. Fossils are dated by the geologic position, which is based on circular reasoning. This guy says, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. Radiometric dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. So your radiometric dating can't even be done without the assumption that the geologic column is correct. And the geologic column was invented in 1830 by Charles Lyell, who hated the Bible and influenced Charles Darwin to turn away from the Bible. So this guy says the rocks date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. I think the cheese fell out of this guy's sandwich is what I think, okay? It's all based on circular reasoning. I covered that in great detail on video number 4. So it's sad that students are being taught that the layers are different ages. We have just enormous evidence that they simply are not. As I was going through earlier, the polystrate fossils show, and one good experiment is worth a pound of theory any day. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these layers. I don't think it's logical or scientific to say the layers are different ages. Those trees are going to rot and fall down. I think it's much more logical scientifically to say the layers formed rapidly before the tree had time to rot. Now, the Bible says Noah's in the ark for a year. That's plenty of time to deposit thousands of layers of sediment. Thousands of feet of sediment can be deposited in 1 year. And these petrified trees in the vertical position totally discredit the geologic column. Now, I know the geologic column is important to the evolutionist. I know that. I'm sorry. It's not science.
All right, our next question is similar in the fact that it does touch on geology, and it has to do with meteors, the actions of meteors, atmospheric dust, dust on the moon. These are different, conglomeration of different questions up here. One of the questions being that there's a lot of evidence for meteoric activity on the Earth, and if it were compressed into the relatively small period of time of 6,000 years, that the explosions that it would have caused would be very significant and would threaten life on Earth if all these things were compressed into 6,000 years. And I know that some of the people in the audience are also looking for maybe we should break this into 2 questions, addressing meteoric dust, and I know that that's been an issue in some debates of this type. So let's break it into 2 questions. Let's first address the compression of meteors into 6,000 years, the meteoric action that there's geological evidence for on Earth. Dr. Hovind, if you could take that.
Okay, I would point out, go ahead with that. First of all, most comets flying through space and therefore hitting the Earth are simply ice, okay, which wouldn't live a pile of dust. Comets are made of rock. There are several types. There's the stony nickel, the iron, and the ice. And the vast majority are ice or ice and iron mixtures or ice and stony nickel mixtures. But by far, the greatest majority of even each individual comet seems to be ice, which is why you get this huge tail when it goes near the sun. They're always blowing off the ice particles as they're melting away or being blown out. Comets don't last very long. Less than 10,000 years is the life expectancy of a comet. So the question would be, why do we still have comets? You know, they're still here. They don't last more than 10,000 years. They're flying around. That's another evidence of a young Earth. As far as the evidence of somebody actually compressing the meteor dust, I don't think that's ever been done, to my knowledge. The existence of comets and meteors is an enigma to the evolutionist and the old Earth creationist. I
didn't mean to compress the meteoric dust. What I meant was if there is evidence of meteoric activity, meteors hitting the Earth, and some of them being very significant and potentially climate changing, all that kind of thing. If those meteors hit the Earth all within a 6,000 year period of time, wouldn't that have given us a vastly different history than what we have?
I think they're starting with the assumption that the Yucatan Peninsula magnetic anomalies represents a giant meteor impact, and it might. Okay, I've been to the Barringer crater, studied it pretty carefully. There's a large one in Canada, 47-mile diameter crater. But I think a 47-mile crater on an Earth 8,000 miles in diameter is really insignificant. I don't see a problem with the meteoric activity being too great. I believe the Earth was struck by an ice meteor at the time of the flood, and that's what triggered the flood to start. And ice, of course, would make huge pockets and simply melt away and would not create catastrophic events. It flooded the world. I cover that in my video number 6. So I think we'd have to have more precise details to even answer the question. You know, like how many known meteor craters are there? I would say it's probably of any relative size. I mean, the Barringer crater is only 4,000 feet across.